Welcome to episode 248 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing writer Craig Walendziak. He's another great example of a screenwriter who doesn't live in Hollywood, but he's been selling spec scripts and getting writing assignments for a number of years now. We dig into his various projects and how he's been able to succeed without being in Los Angeles, so stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 248. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing writer Craig Walendziak. Here is the interview. Welcome, Craig, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So to start out, maybe you can tell me a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
Sure. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, and I was always interested in bands, particularly what I did in music. I played in a lot of punk bands, hardcore bands growing up. Did a lot of touring, and I got a lot of my creative side out that way. As I got older, I needed another outlet. And writing was always one of the things that I enjoyed doing. And cinema was always something that I just loved. You know, like when we were on tour, most of the time we'd stop, wherever we were playing, we'd stop and go see a movie that night, you know. So just always something that I really enjoyed and really loved. So I kind of got into it that way. I needed a creative outlet as I got older and started writing.
Okay, perfect. And what were some of the steps to actually turning this into a career and being a professional writer? What were some of those early steps you took?
Well, a lot of it was, working 2 jobs, like everybody else does. You work your day job and you write at night. You pay your bills 9 to 5 and you live your dream after that, that sort of thing. So I worked in a consulting firm, like a professionally traded consulting firm, and I was the managing director of that company. So when I had downtime, I would be writing, and I'd write there. I'd write at night when I got home. And at first it was really just for myself. I really had no connections to the film industry. So I wrote my first screenplay, the first one that I really finished and was happy with, and it was just this horror one named The Devil's Hammer. And I turned it into I did a broad search, and I found that website called Script Shadow, and I submitted it there. It's really how it all started. And then like a month and a half later, it was on there, like Friday Night Showdown or whatever you call it. I'm not 100% sure. And I had no idea it was going to be up there. And then I got this email that it was, and then I got to see all these comments of people reading it. And it's just like any industry. Some are really harsh, and some are really inspiring and helpful. And they picked it apart, but it won that that week. And then when it got reviewed by Carson on that Saturday, he gave it a worth to read, that sort of thing, which was good. And then and I thought to myself, wow, maybe I can do this. It was, it's a dream. That's what screenwriting is. It's a dream, and you don't realize how much hard work it is until you really get into it. But so I really started plugging away at that point, and I wrote a couple other screenplays, and I submitted The Devil's Hammer to, every festival I could imagine, just because, why not? Because again, I had no connections anywhere, and it started placing well in certain types of competitions. Obviously, it didn't. Made top 10% in the, whatever you call it, the Nichols and that sort of thing. It's not going to win those because it's a very brutal body horror type of movie. But that, that boosted my confidence a little more. Like I was like, okay, well, it's placing and it's winning some of these things. Maybe I should just kind of go all out on this. and then I wrote another script, and then I got an assignment off the Devil's Hammer, a small assignment for Contracted Phase 2, which was a sequel to a body horror movie that I really liked. And
And you just and maybe I'll just cut you up there, and then we'll come back to that, because I definitely want to get into that first sale. You've done a lot of producing, I noticed, on your IMDb page, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that. What is your interest in producing? I mean, these are some decent films. The Chair, had Roddy Piper. He Never Died had Henry Rollins. I mean, what is your involvement as a producer, and why are you involved with those projects?
Usually the ones that I'm involved with are somehow some way that I'm connected to them during my music career. Like that's kind of what a lot of those were. Going back with the punk stuff, like Henry Rollins was always, one of my biggest, dare I say, heroes growing up. So when I had a chance to help out with that one, I jumped on it. The Chair, the same thing. It, had a lot of the actors that I loved as a kid, and it was based off a comic book. So I had a lot of expendable income at that point, so I could help out in the production side and connections and promoting things, that sort of stuff. So that all is just kind of me being in the film industry and taking it kind of how I used to take, the punk rock type of attitude towards things, and just going at things, doing it myself, helping friends when I can help friends, and really like just spinning as many plates as possible is kind of how without any falling.
Yeah, and I'm curious, have you thought about trying to write and direct and produce one of your own features?
Sure. Yeah, directing's probably the next the next thing that I'll try try my hand on. It's just, for me, I don't like spending my time doing shorts, making short movies. I can totally see people doing that and see the benefit in it, but it's just, for me, it's like, I'm writing that pays the bills right now. Luckily I don't have a lot of bills, but it pays the bills right now. And when I get a chance to direct something, I hope hopefully I'll jump at it. There was a couple projects that were in the works of me directing recently, and one of them's on hold and the other one fell through. Okay. And that was actually Contracted Phase 3, which was the we were set to go into production last year, and it's just on pause right now. Yeah. So yeah, I was going to write and direct that one. I wrote about half the script.
So let's dig into some of these writing assignments and some of these scripts that you've sold. So let's start with Contracted Phase 2. So you just mentioned that you got that writing assignment. Maybe you can talk about the ins and outs. How did that writing assignment come to you?
Sure. That was after The Devil's Hammer, and The Devil's Hammer again was a pretty brutal body horror type of horror movie, and Contracted Phase 2, Contracted, the first one, right, same vein. So JD Lifshitz from Boulder Light read The Devil's Hammer and loved it. Read my follow-up screenplay called The Eternal Lies, and he loved that one. And they had an opening for Contracted Phase 2, and they had a very short time frame, about 3 weeks, to write the whole screenplay from start to finish. And so they offered me the assignment, and I was very happy to do it. I actually loved the first Contracted, and I just went at it, and it was definitely a learning lesson. Like you're in such a time crunch, 3 weeks, trying to please all the producers you're working with, the director you're working with, and get it done in such a short time frame with turnarounds and notes and stuff like that. But all in all, I'm really happy with how the film turned out. Minus the ending. The ending we never really agreed on, and they kind of winged it. I hate to say it. Like kind of did what they were envisioning themselves, but. But yeah, all in all, it was a great experience.
How did you get the script? How did The Devil's Hammer? How did that script even get in the hands of that producer?
That one was from Script Shadow.
Okay. So he saw it on Script Shadow.
He saw it on Script Shadow.
Okay.
I should mention though, The Devil's Hammer. I actually used your service with The Devil's Hammer. And sent, because again, with searching the internet, what do I do? I found your service online, and the Blast service, and you did it for me, and I did get a ton of interest from the Blast actually, and I had a couple of producers willing to option it for $1, that sort of thing, and so just I made some good contacts that I keep in touch with this day. Okay. So that was very helpful in the beginning. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem at all. That's good to hear that you had good results. So let's talk about Desolation. How did you get involved with that project?
So I submitted. I was on for a brief time. I was on that website called Stage 32, and that was just me trying to cast as many lines, spin as many plates, as whatever cliche you want to use. And so I went to Stage 32, and then there was a producer from New York that was into horror films that I liked, and I just got to talking with him, and actually submitted in The Devil's Hammer. Same exact thing. It was all off that script, and obviously it was a good writing sample. He really liked it, and he was producing a movie called Desolation, and they had a draft for the screenplay that they couldn't get funding on, and they needed somebody to rewrite it, and so he gave it to me as a page one, and it went up, my compensation went up a step, so it was really nice, and I wrote a page one rewrite of it, and the producers loved it. The director, who was also a producer, liked it. So they took, instead of using my page one draft, we combined them, and that's how I got the writing credit on it. We got a shared writing credit.
I see.
Yeah, so that's how that came about, and that was a great experience working with David Moscow, who's the director. He's a really nice guy. He's a producer himself. And David Harris, who is the main producer on the film. Again, can't say enough things about him, and I think he's going to be doing a lot more bigger things soon.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Marine 6 Close Quarters. How did you get that assignment, or was that a spec script?
So this was so the Marine 6, again, I'm going to go back to The Devil's Hammer. Mm-hmm. I sent them. I had a manager at the time. And won't go into who it was or anything like that, but he just wasn't sending my work out. And I kind of felt like hip-pocketed, if that makes sense. Like, he just wasn't doing, he wanted me to write what he wanted for himself and wasn't sending him any old stuff out. And I thought the Devil's Hammer would be perfect for WWE. And that's WWE Studios. And so I just looked them up on IMDb Pro, and I sent a couple people an email, and one of them responded. And I sent him The Devil's Hammer, and he read The Devil's Hammer, and he loved it. And then, but the Marine 5, which was the one before the Marine 6, was about a motorcycle gang, and so is The Devil's Hammer. So he's like, yeah, I love this, but we can't do it right now because we just made a motorcycle gang movie. Let's table that. Do you have anything you're pitching? So I pitched him like 3 or 4 action ideas. One of them was the action idea that we used for the Marine 6.
Okay.
So so then he took it to his boss and said, hey, I want to make this movie, and the boss said, well, can we just can we fit this to be for the Marine franchise? And and we did. We went from that point. We went to outlining it and just going back and forth and figuring out how it would work with the Marine franchise, and that's how the Marine 6 came about. Okay. Then they bought that pitch and then paid me for the screenplay.
Okay, perfect. So and we can just talk about this briefly, but I'm just curious. Like, I'm just looking up your credits on IMDb to kind of get a feel for your writing history. But there must be a number of projects that got so close to production but didn't quite make it. I mean, you mentioned the one that you were scheduled to write and direct. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. I like your approach in that, and I think it's especially interesting that all 3 of these films, they kind of came from a different avenue, and one of them didn't necessarily build on the other. And so many screenwriters, I think, have this misconception that once you get that first credit, it's smooth sailing from that. And you're out there basically, any one of these scripts could have sold independently of the others. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's correct. And the key that I want to tell everybody too is none of these came from representation. Yeah. So Contracted 2 was before I had a manager. Desolation was before I had a manager. And the Marine 6 was in lieu of a manager. I signed with Gersh while I was negotiating it, and Gersh closed the deal. But this is all, and I'm currently working another assignment that was not from representation. So in general, I want that's important for people to know. There's ways to get work without agents and managers, and you just got to put your head down and do it.
Yeah. For sure. So I wonder if you can talk just briefly about some of these other projects. And the reason I ask is because I'd be curious to hear some of the other things that you've pursued trying to market your scripts, but haven't necessarily paid off in a produced credit. And because it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't work, it means that they just haven't quite worked for you yet. So maybe there's some other angles or some other projects that you've gone down the road with, but haven't quite made it into production yet that you can talk about.
Sure. One of them is Welcome to the Other Side. That was a screenplay that I developed with Kaylee Marsh from The Bloodlist. I was represented with Kaylee for about 2.5 years, and it's one of my favorite stories that I've written, and it's essentially Jurassic Park with ghosts. So instead of dinosaurs, there's ghosts. Things go wrong, and all the ghosts get out of the park, and these people are trying to get out. So I loved it. It's right up my alley. It's fun. It's big. And we went out with that, and that got great reception. That's what got me my water bottle tour, that sort of thing. And we had a pretty pretty major independent studio buy it, right? They're about to buy it. They were going to buy it, and then and I was going to have the offer on Monday, and then they shuttered their entire production arm over the weekend, so it never sold. And we had a couple other people that are interested, but they wanted to do, they wanted to do, they wanted to do work on it. And essentially, my agent at the time didn't want to do any work on it. Wanted to keep trying to sell it. The problem with screenplays, and this is something that people learn soon, is once one agent sent it out, no one else wants to do anything with it. Like you're not going to bring your old projects to a new agent. They don't want to see them. And it's like, it's either sloppy seconds or they just don't like, they want to have something fresh, new, and fun. But to this day, Welcome to the Other Side is my favorite project, and one that I could see, doing very well, when it gets made. It's stuck in this limbo, like I'm not with my manager anymore and I'm not with the agent anymore. And it's kind of just stuck there, so it's like that one, that was really frustrating because that was like, it was going to be my first big sale, and it, just fell through the cracks. I mean, and we just sat there waiting on this one producer to get his ducks in a row for 3 months, and he had a relationship with the agent, and nothing happened of it. So that's really unfortunate.
Yeah. How did you get that? You just mentioned the lady who runs the Blood List. How did you get hooked up with her originally to submit your script and get signed on with her?
It was back when she was. This was prior than the recent updates. She was doing. You could pay her for notes just like any other service, that sort of thing. And I sent in the Devil's Hammer for notes, and she liked the Devil's Hammer. She didn't want to go out with it, but she liked the writing of it. And so we kept in touch, and we kept talking, and she's a really nice girl and woman, and we and then we just kind of hit it off and started working together. We only did about 2 screenplays together, but it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the time I spent with her.
So I'm curious, how come you have not made the move to Los Angeles? What keeps you in Boston?
So actually, I moved. So I moved from Boston, and we were actually heading towards Los Angeles. And then we had some family health issues, and wound up in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So we are in Santa Fe, New Mexico right now, taking care of a few people. And, and it's about a 8-hour drive, which isn't so bad for me. I'm used to that kind of stuff, or an hour and a half flight. So when I'm not on assignments, usually once every 2 or 3 months, I'll fly into LA and set up, meetings with all the warm contacts that I have, and I'll ask my management and agency to, get me some, some water bottle tour, water bottle meetings, cold meetings, if you want to call them, pitch meetings, if they want to send my stuff out, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So have you found it to be a hindrance not being in LA, or you think the 8-hour drive or hour and a half flight is adequate?
Sure. I do think it's if for my professional career, I wish I lived in LA, right? It's much easier to network. It's much easier to meet people. It's much easier to find like-minded people when you're immersed in the industry that you want to be immersed in. Yeah. In New Mexico, we have a lot of production side, for television shows and television shows and movies. There's a lot of big studios out here. But there's nothing on the writing side. Yeah. Again, if for work wise, I wish I lived in LA. Family wise, family's always first. So I just keep plugging away from here.
Yeah. So let's talk about your writing process a little bit. Where do you typically write? Do you have a home office? Do you go out to Starbucks? What does your writing desk look like?
Sure, I have a home office, and it's a separate office in the house. So it's here, standard computer, video games, television with movies, that sort of thing. The video games get away a lot.
And when do you typically write? Are you morning person, evening person?
I'm a better evening writer, but I have a 3-year-old daughter, so that doesn't happen anymore. So it's 9 to 5 for me. I get up, I get my daughter ready for school. My wife takes her to school. And it's like I'm sitting down at my desk by 8:30, 9. And it's usually about an hour of planning and responding to work stuff and business things, and then I try to plug away and get 2 or 3 solid straight hours of writing in, and that's usually split up when I take breaks for thinking, walking, eating, that sort of thing. But
And how many hours a day will you write? You'll write till she comes home from school at 2 or 3?
Yeah, exactly. Like they usually get home around 4 or 5.
Okay.
And so that's usually when I'm done writing for the day. And then when I'm on a deadline, they'll give me more time.
Sure.
So.
How much time do you spend preparing to write in that outlining index card stage versus in the final draft writing dialogue and scene description?
Sure. This year has been exceptionally tedious for me in the outlining, treatments, that sort of thing. I'm working with a new manager, Jeff Portnoy from Bellevue, and he's great, but he's very good with outlines. Very meticulous, pays attention to them, treatments, that sort of thing. So it's a lot of planning before we get to writing, which is probably great in the long run. I just have problems writing treatments. I like to find my characters, and I like to find scenes and beats in the moment. I like to have a loose outline, not a huge treatment. Mm-hmm. But so I've written 4 or 5 treatments this year, and my treatments tend to be about 30 to 40 pages. On Microsoft Word, that sort of thing. So that's almost a full screenplay when you start putting it out with dialogue and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So this year has been tedious with that. But then when I start writing, I tend to write very quickly. 5 to 10 pages a day of a screenplay if I have an outline. Mm-hmm. I just need to have an outline. Yeah. So it's a double-edged. I hate it, but I have to do it. So.
Yeah. So what does your development process look like? It sounds like now you're working with this manager. He's giving you notes. Do you have other people that you get notes from as well?
After I write, yes. But in the pre fade in final draft stage, mm-hmm. It's just him. My agent, sometimes I'll send them both ideas. I'll come up with 10 ideas and I'll send them to my agent, my manager, and see which ones they like. And then whatever one they pick, if it matches with what my manager picks, I'll go with that, and I'll start trying to beat out an outline, and get something done. Mm-hmm. And the whole time pitching people that I know at the same time for other projects, so that's the beginning of the process, and they give me the go ahead on 2 or 3 ideas, and I see which one I can come up with, flesh out the best myself.
Yeah. So what do you do in a situation where maybe your agent or manager are giving you a note that you don't necessarily agree with, and especially on a spec script where, it's not like they're paying you and it's more about, what's going to ultimately get this script sold? How do you deal with notes that you don't necessarily agree with?
I mean, that works a lot. I've had to deal with that a lot with producers, and not so much on the agency or manager side, but, if it did come up, the important thing to realize and think about is the hardest thing to do, that I think, as a beginning writer, is to find representation, right? Like, that's the hardest thing. So you have to kind of trust these people. And then on the second hard part of it is, like, they're not going to send it out with the same gusto they would have had if you don't implement the note that they want you to implement. Mm-hmm. If it's not if it's not like earth-shattering, like earth-shattering note or like story-breaking note, just go with it. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes your instincts are off, and then once you establish yourself, then then you can have more push. But you have to understand that an agent can essentially just take your screenplay, say they sent it to 10 people, and put it in their top drawer. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's like you kind of like you want to think they don't do that, but they don't do it. They do it. So it's listen to your agent, listen to your manager, and sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong, but in the end, listen to them.
Yeah. So what advice do you have for people seeking to break into TV or feature writing?
Just, stay at it. I mean, it's a long process. You hear the miracle people that, write something and sell the screenplay, and then, mm-hmm. it's a long process. It's a tedious process. And like, a lot of the people you see and you're like, wow, these people made it. They haven't made it. Like they may have a couple movies out. They might have a movie in the theater. They might have a couple sales, but they're still chewing their nails and trying to figure out how they're going to make ends meet and that sort of thing. It's mm-hmm. just it's very difficult. And I'm very happy that I started as a hobby. It was my hobby that I never thought I could make it, and then it was like a dream when I figured out that maybe I could make it, and then I kept clawing my way up, and now it's like I'm at the bottom the bottom rung of a ladder hanging over a cliff, and I'm just hanging on. And I've got 3 credits, an agent, a manager that I both like. I just finished another assignment, but I have no idea what I'm doing next, mm-hmm. Other than a spec. I have no idea what I'm doing next, so it's like it's just one of those things that people got to realize. There's 4 million people trying to be screenwriters, and I think that's the number I've heard, and there's and there's not that many jobs. Yeah. So it's like, and then once you have the union locking all the unsold writers out of the equation, it's very difficult for you to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not impossible, but it's very difficult.
Yeah. So what does that mean to you when someone says they made it, or I've made it, or you've made it? What does that actually look like for you? Like, when can you say, I, Craig, have officially made it?
When I stop applying for jobs on LinkedIn, and Indeed, you know what I mean? Like, no, I mean, honestly, I guess when you're comfortable that you can make a living wage every single year, doing the job you want to do, and that can be like one big sale can carry you for 3 years, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But you have to have some sort of pipeline of work or opportunities for work or potential for work. You have to have an agent that's sending you on general meetings and sending you to pitch meetings. You have to be a working screenwriter, and I think it's difficult to maintain work every single year in and year out if you don't have a team working for you, because it's hard to write the projects and find the projects.
Mm-hmm. And I had this conversation with another screenwriter, and the conclusion that we came to was the only people who have really made it are people that have enough money in the bank to never have to work again. And I think, that's a big part of, again, sort of the misconception that I don't think people that are trying to break in fully understand, is that even once you've sold some things and are even making, money from this, there's still just such a element of unpredictability to it, that even the most established screenwriter in the world, next year he could be completely flat broke and not working, and that's just part of the gig.
Yeah, exactly. And and that's really it. And like sometimes you could have 50 producers that love you and want to work with you, but they could be backed up on their slate and they're not going to work with you for 3 or 4 years, or you could, and the good thing about writing is that as long as people still read you, your next screenplay can be the one, and so that, one of my points that I always tell people and new writers is keep in touch with everybody, be warm and friendly with everybody, but don't annoy anyone, because the last thing you want to do is have a producer that doesn't want to take your emails or doesn't want to read your work. Mm-hmm. As long as they'll still read your work, then you've got a huge open door and a huge opportunity. Yeah. And so just don't be that person.
Yeah, exactly. So what have you seen recently that you thought was really great? TV, features, something on Netflix, anything that you've been watching recently that you could recommend to our listeners?
Sure. I guess I love popcorn movies, so I really loved the new Jurassic World, mm-hmm. People rip that thing apart online, but I love that movie, and I went and saw it twice, and it was exactly what I thought it was going to be, mm-hmm. So I really enjoyed that. I really enjoy summer movies like that, and what have I been watching? My wife loves Riverdale, which is on Netflix. That's the Archie comic adaptation. So I don't watch a lot of television at night because it's like I just feel like I should be writing. Yeah. But when I have that hour and a half with my wife after my daughter goes to bed, we watched back to back Riverdales for 3 seasons worth, and that was better than I thought it was going to be.
Not a glowing recommendation.
No, it's not a glowing one, but it was better than I thought it was going to be. So, yeah, that kind of thing.
Cool. So how can people see The Marine 6? Do you know when that's going to be released?
Yeah, it's coming out this fall. We don't have an exact date, and it'll be VOD, Blu-ray, DVD, that sort of thing. WWE is really good at getting the thing out there. Sure. I'm not sure if they're doing a theatrical. They might do a small theatrical because it is, from all accounts, people are telling me it's the best one they've done yet. The director and all the actors, and it's got a pretty cool cast, And I think it'll play more like a buddy cop movie than anything else they've done. Okay. Because it's got Shawn Michaels and The Miz playing old Marine buddies. That get caught in a bad situation, and so I wanted this one to be more lighthearted and kind of play to the actors' strengths. Like we've seen those guys when they're actually on wrestling and WWE. They're very funny and they can handle jokes and lines well, so I want to kind of get to that. And but there's still some really great action scenes, and it was a really fun project to work on. Yeah. And hope to do more stuff with them in the future.
Perfect. What's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Twitter, Facebook, a blog, anything you're comfortable sharing?
Sure. I'm at Craig_Mack, MACK on Twitter. That's I deleted a lot of my old tweets just because of all the James Gunn stuff, and just it didn't seem worth it to have them up there. I don't think there was anything that bad on there, but who knows? So I deleted them all. But I'm still pretty active on there. And Facebook, if you want to add me on Facebook, you'll add me nonstop, and that's just my name, Craig Walendziak, and you can look up the spelling online. I won't bore you with it.
Yeah, perfect. I'll link directly to it in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, perfect, Craig. I really appreciate your coming on and talking with me. Sounds like you're off to the races, and I look forward to having you on in the future when you have another film to promote.
Great. Thank you very much, Ashley. I really appreciate it.
Perfect. We'll talk to you later.
Take care.
Bye. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the reader who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, character, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features or television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write your logline and synopsis for you. You can add this logline and synopsis writing service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your screenplay gets a recommend or a consider from one of our readers, you get to list the screenplay in the SYS Select database, which is a database for producers to find screenplays and a big part of our SYS Select program. Producers are in the database searching for material on a daily basis, so it's another great way to get your material in front of them. As a further bonus, if your script gets a recommend from one of our readers, your screenplay will get included in our monthly Best Of newsletter. Each month we send out a newsletter that highlights the best screenplays that have come through our script analysis service. This is a monthly newsletter that goes out to our list of over 400 producers who are actively looking for material. So again, this is another great way to get your material out there. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Bradley Stryker, who's an actor as well as a writer, director, and producer. He just did a really cool horror thriller film called Land of Smiles. We talked through that project and exactly how he was able to get it produced. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. That's the show. Thank you for listening.